Three things are safety items. The three safety items are your triangles that are in the bin, your fire extinguisher, and spare fuses. The one that needs to be inspected is the fire extinguisher. It's securely mounted, fully charged, and it's the correct type. If they ask you what type it is, it's DOT compliant. Then when you get into your truck, you're gonna climb in. You might want to go to the other side of the truck. You're gonna climb in, 3 points of contact facing the vehicle. Once you're in the vehicle, the first thing you're gonna do is inspect your seat belt. Free from frays, it locks, snaps in and latches, releases. Then you're gonna get the key out. When you get the key out, put in the ignition, you're gonna do a safe start. The first thing you're gonna do is key on, engine off. You're gonna let all your warning lights come on. If you have a problem in any of your systems, they're gonna come on and stay on. The one that you have to point out is your ABS light, which is right there. Then you're gonna turn your key on, foot on the brake, hand on the wheel, and do a safe start. After you do your safe start, you want to do the remainder of your in-cab with the engine running, otherwise your gauges won't function. So I'm going to check my volt gauge. My volt gauge started out at 12 volts, it's rising up to 15, so now that I know that it's working, it was measuring battery voltage, now my alternator is producing power and it's heading up. My water temperature is about 125 degrees right now because the engine has been sitting. It will warm up as the truck starts running. My oil pressure is at about 40 psi, that's normal operating range. My air tanks right now are reading probably about 110. We'll go into details on these when we do our brake check. And then my transmission temperature is reading low because the truck has not been running. Over here I have my tachometer, which measures engine RPM, and my speedometer. My speedometer is reading 0 because the truck's sitting still. Up here in the information panel, I have 4 things I want to indicate. My left turn signal, my right turn signal, my 4-way flashers, and my high beams. My lights have to be on for my high beams. This is my light switch, my cruise control, radio. All these operate the machine of the vehicle. Then I have my horn, my air horn, my engine brake, transmission selector, fuel gauge, DEF. This is a differential lock. What that does is it locks my 2 rear wheels together when I'm driving. I normally drive with it unlocked because it has odd steering characteristics when we're driving with it locked. Next, I want to go down and check my wipers, turn them on, make sure they function. I'm going to push the button in to squirt some fluid on the windshield, make sure they're making good contact with the windshield, and then make sure that if we get rain that they are capable of clearing the windshield. Then I'm going to turn on my climate control, make sure my defroster comes on. Make sure that it changes temperatures. Then I'm going to turn it back down and make sure that it blows down into my face. It's blowing in my face. Then next I am going to check 3 things for each personal driver. Make sure my mirrors are adjusted, steering wheel's adjusted to where I want it, in and out, up and down, and my seat. Then I'm going to check my door locks. Make sure they function. Make sure that my window and the passenger window goes up and down. I want to make sure that the passenger window is in good operating condition in case the truck rolled over. I may need to use this side of the vehicle for egress. I'm going to check the interior lights of the truck. The door's open, so these ones are on. And that is all of the in-cab things. Next, I'm going to go into my air brake check. With my air brake check, the first thing I'm going to do is key off, key on, engine off, starting with a fully charged system, release all brakes. So my brakes are released and my needle is settling and I'm starting at 125 psi. When I start with 125 psi, I'm going to do a static air brake check. This test isn't required by DMV, but I'm going to do it anyway because the numbers are very close to an applied test and you guys mix them all up. So if you guys do them in order, you guys seem to remember. So I'm starting at 125 psi. What I'm looking for is I'm allowed to lose 2 psi for a single vehicle, 3 for a combination. Don't say the word doubles because doubles means you're towing 2 trailers. So during this test, I'm going to test as a single vehicle because the brakes on my trailer are electric. Let me get to my stopwatch. So I'm starting now at 125 PSI. I'm allowed to lose 2 PSI in 1 minute time frame. Okay, for this one I'm going to say 1 minute has elapsed and I've lost 0 PSI. That makes this test a pass. The next test that I'm going to do is my applied air brake check. When I do an applied air brake check, I'm going to fully apply my air brakes to the floor. I'm allowed to lose 3 PSI for a single vehicle, 4 for a combination. Again, I'm going to test as a single because the brakes on the trailer are electric. I'm not going to state my air pressure until my foot is fully on the floor and the needles have settled. So now, if you wiggle at all during this, start over. Okay, so I'm starting at about 120 PSI. I'm going to hold it all the way down for 1 minute. I have to get up like this and push down or my knee just hurts real bad. So whatever you take, some people use 2 feet, some people can just hold it down. If you hear even a little pss, pss, you have to start over. Recharge your system. Don't skip on time either. Some of the guys will be over here in the middle seat watching your needle drop. Make sure that it doesn't move. Get into Molly's lid.
Did actually.
Okay, so 1 minute time frame has elapsed. I've lost 0 air pressure. That makes this test a pass. The next thing I'm going to do is my low air pressure warning. I'm going to pump my brake pedal, lowering the air pressure in my tanks, watching my needle drop. When my needle drops between 55 and 75 PSI, I'm looking for an alarm to occur. I'm going to see a red light occur on both of the gauges. If the engine was running, I would also get an audible alarm. During this test, if you pump the brakes too fast, they will fail you. You're supposed to have approximately 8 seconds in between, but most of them let us get away with just staying in control. So if the needle settles and you're confident that it's not going to drop anymore, you can pump them again. If you go too fast, sometimes the light will come on and you'll go past the 55 and it'll condemn the truck because it didn't fall in the correct parameters. Okay, as you saw, I got 1 light to light and then the second light. If you only get 1 to light, give it a small pump and it will light the second light. Both lights are on. They're on at 60 PSI, and that is in between the 55 and 75 parameter. That makes this test a pass. The next test that I'm going to do is my emergency spring pop-out test. In the book, it says to make sure your spring brakes automatically apply. Again, I'm going to pump my brakes, lowering the air pressure. I'm looking for these to automatically apply between 20 and 45 PSI. I'm going a little fast, just digital recording. Okay, my spring brakes have automatically applied. When they applied at 25 PSI, which is in between the 20 and 45 parameter. That makes this test a pass. This is the biggest thing that most people fail. They forget to push that in the beginning. If you forget to push that in and it never pops out and you catch it, recharge your system all the way over, go back to the beginning tests, because the beginning test stated with all brakes released. So you could just redo this test, but you would fail the other ones that you did prior. The next thing I'm going to do is my air compressor governor cut out test. I'm going to start my engine and start rebuilding air pressure. I need my governor to cut the air pressure out at 140 PSI maximum. It used to be said prior to 130, we said prior to 140, and the guy failed us because he said 139 is prior to 140 and it's 140 max. So that one word cost, that was on AK's test. Yeah. So you're allowed to rev the engine up about 1500 RPM to help increase the speed. So what I'm looking for during this is I see my needles rising. When I see my needles rise and then stop rising and settle, that's where cutout occurred. I'm not allowed to say that I heard anything outside. So now our low pressure warning went off. So if I take that off, you'll hear the audible alarm go away. If I rev it back up, it's going to come back on, but it's going to come on because the parking brake is on. My needle has stopped rising and settling. My needle is settled at 125 psi, and that makes this test a pass. The next thing I'm going to do is my air compressor governor cut-in test. I'm going to step on my parking brake, my service brake, lowering my air pressure. I'm going to watch my needle drop down and then stop and then start to rise. Where it stops is where the governor cut it in. This needs to happen no lower than 100 psi. Foot off onto the floor during this test. You can't leave it sitting on the brakes. So my needle's dropped down. Okay, my needle's still dropping. It is at 110 psi and it is stopped, and it's now rising. So air compressor cut in occurred at 110 psi. My next test that I'm going to do is I'm going to shut the truck off, take the key with me, put it in my pocket. I'm going to climb out of the truck with 3 points of contact. Get the chalk blocks. Do we have any chalk blocks out? Can you close the hood? Our chalk blocks are already picked up, so we are going to put the key back in the ignition. We'll restart the truck. We're going to test the parking brake, the service brakes, and the trailer brakes next. So total, you're going to have, I believe it's 9 tests, 8 of which are required. The one that's not required is static. Okay, so now I'm going to restart my truck. My parking brake is already engaged, so all I need to do to test it is drop the truck into drive, give it a little bit of gas. I feel the truck tugging. If the indicator light was flashing, I did not get it into drive. Your foot has to be on the brake when you push the button and get a solid light. So that was my parking brake test, and that was a successful test. The next test I'm going to do is I'm going to release my parking brake, lift my foot off the service brake, and reapply them. When I reapply the service brake, I don't want to feel it pull in one direction or the other. No delay in application or unusual feels. Then the last test that I'm going to do is I'm going to roll forward and manually lock my trailer brakes. And I feel a slight tug from behind. I do not feel it on this truck, so that's a fail. This truck would not be able to test. So you'll just feel a slight tug. That's it.